Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about lead code. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, what makes platforms like LeetCode and HackerRank unsuitable for interview preparation? Is it true that competent developers can ace interviews even without preparation? Yes, that is true. So I wouldn't go as far as to say that LeetCode and HackerRank are unsuitable for interview preparations because, as I've told you quite a few people before, there's usually two flavors of interviews within IT, and the one is the code test that is algorithm based or data structures or something like that, and then you have the more realistic one usually where they create some type of project, like a very small project in the framework or tools or so forth that they are using within that given company, and then you're giving some type of specification. You're going to implement an endpoint or make a UI or something like that. And so the problem is that these styles are both very common, like you can get one or the other. It's just practically impossible to say that one is going to be the one that you're going to get or the other one is going to be the one you're going to get, so you have to basically prepare for both. Now, some of these more algorithmic types of questions are not as accessible to a lot of people. I've found like most people find them to be a little bit difficult, so it is good to practice a little bit because fundamentally, even though anybody who's ever been a serious software developer knows for a fact that quite a lot of these lead code and HackerRank exercises, as I've said before, guys, it's not like they're not relevant. It's just that they are designed for something that is much more akin to competitive programming than something that you will do in your day-to-day job. It's more academic and theoretical and more focused on that sort of space rather than the actual work that you're going to do. But it's still relevant. That's the key thing. You can't just go and say that no, this is completely irrelevant. It doesn't matter. So of course it matters because fundamentally, big O notations and knowing how to apply the right data structures and how to think about code in like from the perspective of efficiency and all of this sort of stuff, it does matter, and it is problem solving as well, where I'm not going to go as far as to say that, for example, graph theory is something you're going to use on a daily basis, but I have been in situations, guys, where that has helped me understand a given problem. So I don't want to go that far and say that this is irrelevant. I want you to understand that there is a balancing act, and the thing I usually try to tell people is that if you make the mental mistake, and this is the extremists that I meet quite often who say that they're all about this, all about that. The classic one is that they say, oh, I'm going to spend months on learning how to do algorithms and stuff like that. And I go, sure, do that. But don't forget that there's a difference between having really good skills with lead code and HackerRank and doing the actual job. And if you don't have both, you're still going to fail. And then they go, what do you mean? And I say, well, you see, you might get into Google or Facebook or whatever company you're going for who is using these sorts of things, right? You might get in, and then on your first week, you don't know how to use Git, you don't know how to like merge any code, you don't know how to write a unit test, you don't know how to ship a single damn thing. And then you're still going to get fired after usually like not that long. Well, it depends, of course, but you're still going to fail. And that's the problem. The problem is when you go to the extreme and you don't understand that both of these things are to a certain degree necessary. What I usually recommend to people is 20-80. That's a good rule. 80% time spent on basically trying to build things, because the building of things is the thing that is important. 20% things on practicing for the interview and things like that. That's a very good ratio, because as I said, in many cases the algorithm test and so forth, you might pass that if you focus really hard on it, but if you can't do the job, that's also a vector, like an area where they're gonna get you're gonna get the same result. In one case, you don't get into the workspace. In the other case, you get fired because you're incompetent. And I like to tell people this: if you have to pick between not getting the job and getting fired for incompetency, then don't get the job. And that brings me to the way that I usually do things. And I know that I might be a little bit, I'm not saying special here, but this is the way I think about it. And I've said so before. I have never not a single time, practiced for trying to get a job, or like to go and just practice to prepare for a certain interview, because my rationality is very simply that if I am good enough to work in this environment, then I shouldn't have to distort, like temporarily boost, quote unquote, my knowledge of something so that I can pass the bar and then get into the company. That's the way I think about it. That's my strategy. And I know that that is not necessarily the best strategy, because I'm pretty sure that I would choke on a bunch of stuff due to the fact that I have this mindset. But I also know for a fact that due to the fact that I have had multiple jobs over a career that has spanned now about a decade or something like that, and I've never had to do this sort of preparation, I know for a fact that you can get in without having to prepare or things like that. And I have had algorithm questions before, guys, and so you can go about it in multiple ways. Like at the end of the day, what matters is, do you have the skills to write an efficient algorithm, and do you have the skills to actually do the daily job? And doing the daily job will teach you how to code efficiently. It's very good to have as I said, the theory is very important, but it's not the job, and at the same time you can't ignore it completely, because it is part of the job, and especially in the interviews it becomes fairly relevant in, I would say, 50% of the 50%. It's a 50-50. I've never seen like a clear trend between these two types of interviews. So what I want you to take away from this is that the reason why I won't go as far as to say that it's unsuitable to do LeetCode and HackerRank. I think these are excellent platforms, and I have my own, I've done my own lead coding, and I have some ranks and so forth, and so it's not like I don't do it, but I usually do it just because it's fun, because I have some time over, or I feel like I'm not really motivated by one of my projects or stuff like that, and I just want to do something fun, and I enjoy it. But I don't do it out of fear for this, or that I'm not doing it because I'm trying to prepare or boost myself before in an interview or something like that. Because as I've said, guys, it's usually 50-50 how the interview is going to work, and you have to remember that once you get into the company, you still have to have the skills to do the actual job, and the actual job is much more different from lead code. So if you're only doing lead coding, I would argue that is a mistake. My personal preference is 80-20. 50-50 works as well. Split it, because you have to know how to build things, because the building of things and using the tools of the trade and all that stuff, that's what the companies are going to measure your success based on. Like that's the thing, that's the real job. Lead coding is just it's an exercise. It's not the actual job itself. It is valuable, but it's not the whole story. So you can't just go, I'm going to do all or nothing. You have to split, have a good ratio here. And I know for a fact, guys, that you can get that you can ace an interview without having to prepare. The reason being, because I've done it myself many times, and I know for a fact that many of my coworkers and a lot of the people that I have interviewed, they have aced a lot of different interviews without having to sit and prepare for that specific job, because frankly, the people who are really good, they usually have more than one job offer. They're not betting everything on just one job. So if you're going to prepare for a bunch of different companies, as I said, you know for a fact that you can't predict what questions are going to be there. Is it going to be a recursion thing? Is it going to be graph theory? Is it going to be a special project? You have no idea of knowing what they're going to test you on. So, and you can't prepare for all the things. Have a great day.